School board, you can't get away from anybody, you know. At least in Washington, I can fly away an hour. It's more difficult for you to get to me. So I have a little buffer. The school boards don't have that, but that's not how it should be anyway. And that's where it comes down. And what's going on with critical race theory, for instance, perfect example. Yesterday it came out and made the news that a bunch of mothers in schools in Florida had decided enough's enough. And they're going to take back their schools. And it's over the critical race theory. They did not want that teaching. And so they were banding together with a huge network of mothers that were saying, we're going to protect our kids from being taught lies about our country. Now that's their responsibility, and I'm glad they're doing it. And the local districts will have to decide whether they have the background information, the punch along with it to get it done. But that's where it has to happen. And frankly, we've gotten too far away from realizing that the government that governs best is government that governs least, and the government closest to the people is the government that governs best, because you can get to those people. And so I'll be one in Washington continuing to try to downsize the federal government from having as much play and responsibility in our lives and taking some authority we've never were given. I can read that in the Constitution very clearly. Next question. Yes, sir.
This is about illegal immigration.
Okay.
So all the numbers I'll be using...
Illegal immigration.
Illegal immigration, yeah. Particularly in the southwest border. Okay, that's where most of it's occurring. And the numbers I'll be using are from the U.S. Customs and Border Protection website. So, because you don't read those in the popular press, it's mainstream media. But it's accelerating, according to them. In the past 8 months, illegal entries, okay, which are attempts to enter the country illegally, and these are only the ones that they've apprehended, okay, is 929,868, okay. This is 2 times the amount of the entire previous year, and it's accelerating. Just to give you an example, the entries for May of 21 this year, last month, were 180,000. In May of 2020, 23,000. Okay. Illegal entries are projected to be for the entire year, and this is a fiscal year because the government runs on a fiscal year, from 1.4 to 1.65 million illegals that are apprehended. It does not include those that are not apprehended. And so one of the questions I had, and recently the Guatemalan president said this is Biden's issue. He opened the door when he said there were going to be any incarcerations. With Kamala Harris and her lack of visibility at the border, her inappropriate responses during her visit to Guatemala, is there anything realistically being done now, Congressman, to stop illegal immigration?
From my perspective, no. And Vice President Harris's statement in Guatemala saying twice, do not come. Mm-hmm. Do not come. Many of you heard that statement. That's the only effort that has been indicated to stop what is happening presently. I don't believe that those 2 statements that she made will have any impact, and so far it hasn't. People are still coming. They heard her statements and our president's statements early on, before even the inauguration, that we want to change what has been happening there. Now there, we want you to come. And they're coming. I was there now a little over a year ago, down on the McAllen border and watching what was going on. It was amazing how well the law was being used. And I say the law because we have immigration law. It's there in place. But the additional law that was put in place, or regulation put in place by the past administration, of keeping people in Mexico until their case was adjudicated, was working. The day I was there, I saw one Honduran gentleman sitting in the room that just 6 months prior had 3,500 people in this small room. The room wasn't much bigger than 3 of these together. And he was the only one sitting there. And I asked, what's he waiting for? He was waiting for the bus that would take him back to the encampment across the border in Mexico, where he would be kept until his case came up. And it was working. When I went into the cages, we call them cages because that's what they were called. They weren't cages, but that's what they were called. Now they're not called cages. They're the same things. But there were little children in there, and they were in protective areas, and there were adults. A few of the adults, especially a few of the males, were in the same fenced-in area as the little children. The other male adults were outside. When I asked about that, they said, well, those were male adults who submitted when they came through that they were relatives of the child they were bringing. When they were requested to take the DNA test, then they said, you made a mistake. I'm not an actual relative. I was requested by the relatives to bring this child. Mm-hmm. And so they were no longer staying with those children. But it was a small group. It was working. We had, for months, we had heard nothing about the border, other than the fact that it was there, and people were still coming, but they weren't crushing the border at that time. Now it's, my colleagues who have been down there as recently as 2 weeks ago say it's unbelievable. And the morale of the Border Patrol agents that are responsible with this is just at rock bottom. And then you think of the humanitarian crisis. That truly we are humanitarian. I believe America is. And ought to be. Ought to be. To think that we are encouraging cartels to use this as a money-making process, and females, whether they be small children or adults, 1 in 3 at this time, 1 in 3 at least, this is what we know of at least, are being sexually assaulted on the trip up. If that's not a humanitarian crisis, I don't know what it is. And it has to change, but right now, we have no indication, and the vice president of this country, who's been given bizarre responsibility for the border, won't even go to our border. Mm-hmm. What's that say? Mm-hmm. And sure, she hasn't gone to the moon or Europe either. She likes the border. Next question, yes.
Well, my question, is there any discussion, because our families had that exact same what example you just gave, the humanitarian issue. You're saying we're humanitarian in USA, which we are. That's why we are all here, because of immigration and that. But the discussion, what you were just saying about the raping of the women that's going on, and because I think it's free up here and they're going to be safe. Has that discussion what you were just saying, has that discussion happened among your colleagues and you and with the other side that believes that we're doing the right thing by having open borders?
We certainly have had discussions, and discussions to the end that we're in right now, where nothing is changing. The reason why so many of us on the Republican side of the aisle have gone to the border, and why our Texas delegation members have invited more and more of us down, is to see exactly what's happening, because the media isn't talking about it. The Biden administration isn't letting the media into those cages. They aren't cages. I'm just using the nomenclature. But the reason the media isn't reporting it, I have no idea, other than the fact they are complicit in the lie that is going on, protecting this administration. Sure, there are countries in Central America, there are countries in South America, there are countries in Europe that are sending people through the southern border now. There are Middle East terrorists coming through.
Answering a lot.
Is that right? Is it something about GPS? All of that is being seen. But the debate only goes far as us putting out the information and the pictures the personal testimonies of individuals at the border that we interview and bringing it back. Fox News, you'll hear some of it on, but the rest you won't. And I think that, to a great degree, unless it's people like you that are interested in hearing what's going on, it's out of sight, out of mind. And the numbers of children that we have safely housed here in Michigan right now, who've come from the border, they're safely housed, they're being treated very well, humanely. They're living a life now they've never experienced before. I get that. But they've come to a country that has long said it's a country of laws and justice. And now they're seeing those same laws broken. Yes, sir.
Different subject. Thank you for being here, Congressman. I've heard a lot of rumors about Antifa being involved on January 6th. I'm wondering, based on those rumors, why did you vote against the bipartisan commission to investigate what happened on January 6th?
We have multiple committees investigating that. We have 450 or more now already incarcerated or adjudicated to be guilty of various crimes on that day. That's come as a result of FBI, Justice Department, various congressional committees that are responsible for doing those investigations. To have another investigation after the 9/11 Commission pattern, allegedly, that was controlled by one party, committee staff, the only committee staff involved with that commission would have been Democrat committee. It's unnecessary. We know the problem. The Senate just came out. Gary Peters, in fact, led that committee, subcommittee, in its responsibility in looking into the problems, what we needed. And it came down to the fact that the Capitol Police wasn't trained adequately for this, and they, I guess you could say, violated one of the key responsibilities. When you have intelligence that something is going to happen, believe it and plan toward it. They didn't do that. A week ahead of time, they had indication that there were groups that were coming to cause a disturbance at the Capitol, and they disregarded it. So to go any further on that and set up a commission that would be partisan in nature, I saw no need to support that. Further questions? Yes, ma'am.
Two totally unrelated subjects. Excuse me. Who can control the robocalls? Even though we're on a no-call list, they say, well, you know, they're from out of the country. Well, companies in this country are paying them to do that. Why can't those companies be prosecuted for those illegal robocalls?
They can. There's law in place, and we just recently upgraded some robo laws. I get robocalls every single day.
Oh, yeah, here it is.
I get my phone. I was on this morning on another call, and I heard the buzz, and I looked and it says, potential spam call. I get those all the time. It seems that, and I say it seems that because I think the reality is, these people are so creative that anytime we change a law to pick it up, they find a way around it. I'm on the do not call list. It doesn't make any difference. I still got those calls. Cell phones, for a long time, they couldn't get to your cell phone. Now they get to your cell phone. So we continue to do it, and when we are able to catch who is doing it, there are laws that have stiff penalties and prosecutorial opportunity. I just had a bill that I introduced dealing with seniors and fraudulent phone calls. It'll work if we can get the person who does that. And for right now we can. But down the road I bet we won't be able to. So again, the best thing I can say is that if it's a call with a phone number or an issue that you're not aware of, you're not familiar with, don't answer it. Just don't answer it. And if they have a legitimate message, they'll leave a voicemail for you and you call back.
The other
So some of you call me and I don't answer. Don't think that's ignoring you. Leave your message. But I hope you don't have my cell phone.
My other question is, who can make the IRS more responsive? Your office has been trying to help me, and that's fine. But the IRS to the John Q. Public, I was on hold for 86 minutes. Then they picked up and said, "We're still busy." Boom. Disconnected call.
That's where the only thing that could make that happen is a total bipartisan effort of Congress itself. That got away from the politics of the union jobs that IRS employees are in, and are willing to stand up to federal unions, which Franklin Roosevelt, a Democrat, said we should never have public sector unions, because it is the public sector union voting against and working against the people who are paying their bill. But we haven't. And that's the problem. Right now, to go to the IRS and say, wait a second, you're essential employees. You cannot take time off during COVID. We will not allow you to take time off during COVID. If you don't feel that you can come to work, then you're going to have to find another job some other place. We're going to fill your job with somebody who can do it. You are a federal employee paid for by taxpayers. We did not have a bipartisan willingness to do that. And so now, because of COVID, there's even a greater delay in people getting checks or responses to concerns that they should have gotten regularly. And the power, I mean, I was going to go on a rabbit trail, I won't. About the IRS and about being careful about changing and amending our Constitution. Because in the majority of cases, not all, but the majority of cases when we've amended the Constitution, except for the first 10 amendments, and 3 or 4 after that, the rest of them, including the 16th Amendment that gave us the IRS, has screwed up life for a lot of us. So, yes, sir.
As a follow-up to that, do you support increased funding for the IRS then?
No, they're not using their money well right now. No way. There is no IRS agent that is suffering anything like the majority of my constituents who are middle income, middle class workforce. IRS employee basically cannot lose their job because of union contract requirements and civil service requirements. They didn't go, the government didn't shut down, the government was still there. And everyone, and I'll use my staff as an example, and they're good people doing good work. You guys hear that from me? I couldn't do my work without them, but they had no fear of not getting their paychecks during the entire COVID situation. I can't say that about the majority of my constituents. Small businesses, the job providers, the restaurants, the employees at those restaurants and those small businesses. So no, I will not support an increase in funding for the IRS. Do their job. Do their job. And that's not saying there aren't good people in the IRS working there. But they're still getting paid. Do their job. Cool down, Tim. Thanks.
They could go on strike like the air traffic controllers did under Reagan. That would fix it.
Reagan fired him.
Yeah.
Thank God. They haven't struck since, have they?
No.
Other questions or comments? Yes.
Yeah, so I'd like to go back to what this gentleman said in the beginning about the horrific event that happened on January 6th. So I wonder, did you have any direct contact or communications with any of the people who were participating in that Save America January 5th and 6th event?
No, I didn't. Until after the event. I had a bus from Hillsdale County, there were 2 buses that came from Hillsdale County, calling me or texting me and saying, Congressman, I want you to know we're not there at the Capitol. We're in our bus all the way going home.
So I wonder, that night, after everything that happened, why you still voted against our electoral college decision.
I had the constitutional responsibility to vote.
So, right. And you also had the responsibility to vote yes
No, I didn't.
for the electoral college.
No, I didn't.
So you,
Not at all.
You know-
why would you say I had the constitutional responsibility to vote with the electoral college?
I mean, because the end result was that Biden had won. And so you had to certify the election. And I sit on the Eaton County Canvassing Board.
Mm-hmm.
And I really took offense, to be honest with you, that you might think and you have said that our election was not done properly.
I didn't say that of Eaton County. When did I say that?
Well,
I believe.
And wait, let me answer the
Yeah.
question.
Now, you were the first to say that this county was correct.
Pardon?
You were the first to say this county was correct.
Correct.
I was confident.
and
I
so,
was confident of every single one of my counties.
Yeah.
And I
okay,
met with every clerk of all of my counties before the election. I asked what they felt was going on, if they thought they had things under control. Because things were crazy in this state as well as other states because of a
one
Secretary of
mistake, one mistake that a human being made in
No, I'm
northern
not talking about
Michigan.
that. The reason I would have voted to object to Michigan electors was not for the votes itself, but was for the things that the Secretary of State did that she had no authority under our Constitution, the Michigan Constitution, and the U.S. Constitution to do, including what Chris Murray, Justice Christopher Murray, ruled rightly on when she asked clerks in the state of Michigan to disregard the requirements on signatures on absentee ballots. She said, be flexible and disregard. She didn't have the responsibility, the authority, or the right to do that according to the Constitution. That's why I would have objected to Michigan. We didn't get that chance because no senator from Michigan stood up and said, I want to object. But I objected against Arizona and Pennsylvania.
And Wisconsin.
No, we didn't vote on that. We voted on,
Oh, right, those two.
that's all we voted on.
But then why did you sign that amicus brief that Texas had?
You don't think a sovereign state in our union, Texas, that felt their rights of their voters were egregiously hampered as a result of other states doing willy-nilly what they want regarding the law for elections, and all they were asking the Supreme Court to do was to adjudicate that. And you know what amicus brief means?
Yeah, it's a support for an idea.
No, it isn't. It's support for the court legally hearing a legal request from a state to hear it. That's all we were saying. It didn't say I agreed with Texas. That's what indivisible groups and others are saying about me. That's not what I signed on. And all you have to do is read the amicus brief.
I did.
Read it, and it will say, we request the Supreme Court to hear the case, the justified case of the Texas state. That's all we were saying.
Okay. I'm sorry, I don't want to get your, dander up, but I
No,
have...
but I want to make it very clear, because this is the type of information that gets out, if it's not clear, that causes misunderstanding. I've said numerous times, and I know some people will disagree with me, I don't think President Trump won the state of Michigan. Do I think he lost by as much? No, I don't think so. I think there were significant irregularities that went on. I think the fact that the Secretary of State sent out massive amounts of absentee ballot applications without authorization from the legislature, and our Constitution mandates that the legislature is the only one responsible for the laws of elections. She got away with it. And our state Supreme Court, that's worth a warm pitcher of spit, it's a total partisan court, wouldn't allow evidentiary hearings even on that. Had they, I don't see how they could have ruled. For instance, thankfully, today, a ruling came out that they said that court case brought by the legislature, or the petition drive started by the legislature, to say that the governor can no longer have supreme power under the 1945 law under emergency rules. And the canvassers split 2-2 on whether the signatures that have been adjudicated by the courts as being correct in number. And because of 2-2 split, it wasn't allowed to move forward. Fortunately, the Supreme Court heard it and found no way around it and had to rule in favor. But that didn't happen with our electoral process this time around. And sure, we had COVID. That made it more difficult. And we knew we had to have some more flexibility. But in this state, we have plenty of flexibility. And what went on, I think, was against the Constitution of the state of Michigan. And I was, by the Constitution, mandated to disapprove of our electors for that reason.
But many of us voted for Proposal 2, which meant that we wanted to have, more freedom in our voting rights. We wanted to have things to be easier for people to vote.
Absentee ballots. Yeah.
But it's getting harder now, and it shouldn't.
In what way?
Well, because we have a number of laws right now that are being pushed through. It's nothing with you because it's the state government. But I just want to say that I think a lot of people here in Michigan want it to be easier to vote.
Read the bills.
Yeah.
Read the bills. You'll find
Yeah.
out they're not making it any more difficult.
No.
They're keeping
Some.
saying, no, not any.
No.
They're making it, they're simply saying, if you don't think that a person ought to prove that they're legal, then it's more difficult. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying that I think that we should be able to have voter ballot boxes in many different places for us to be able to put our ballots in. There's been no issue with the problem with the ballot boxes.
Why are you not
Use
letting
your mailbox.
Congressman speak?
But some people really are, I mean, I don't want to start a fight with all you guys, but
Again, look at the bill, look at the bill.
I've read them.
They aren't doing away with all of those special boxes. But those are only put in place because of COVID.
Yeah.
We don't need them. You've got the mailbox. You've got the ability even to have, in this state, you can have someone, your family member, take the application to the clerk's office. I mean, I'd want to make it easier for the clerks myself.
Yes, definitely.
So wouldn't a box be better than a mailbox? The U.S. postal system, who can't deliver something from my house, my neighbor within
It's so
6
true.
days? I'm trusting a drop box a lot more with a clerk, than
Unless that drop box isn't guarded. Then can you trust that
Yes.
drop box to not be broken into? And who's taking those out? When you have a postal employee moving mail around, there's some significant and egregious laws to say if you mess up, you're going to be in significant trouble as well. But the issue again, without COVID, absentee ballot, same-day registration, which we have in this state, all of that, how much easier can it be? The issue that most people are actually pushing back against is requiring a legal signature and an identification, a picture ID. That's what they're pushing back against. And they're saying that's racism.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not
You
right.
gotta be kidding.
But there is a drop box at Delta Township. You can use it
Yeah.
for your ballot.
Yeah, and that's legal.
That's not guarded.
It's quite very secure.
Let's hope they all stay.
It's on a government property, it's secure.
Okay.
But when you have these things
I
sitting,
walk mine in.
when you have these things sitting out at a corner, a street corner, because it's a place where a lot of people move in and out, there's a lot of concern with that. But again, why do we need it? And most of us, our township office, our village office, our city hall, clerk's office, is a short drive to get there. And if not, there are other ways that it can be transported for us, including as you do, as I've voted absentee on only a few occasions when I'm in DC and a school board election is on, I'll walk it into my clerk's office. But I think, look at those bills, and the bills that have been already approved in Georgia, Florida, are all more open than New York City or Delaware. And I say that because that's the president's home state, and New York, of course, a liberal state that has pushed back against any type of reform. It's easier to vote in Georgia now than it is to vote in Delaware or New York or Michigan for that matter. Yes, ma'am.
I'll give you something that laugh at, and it's the U.S. Postal System's fault. My son is in the military, active military. So his ballots come to my house, I forward them to him. He sends them back, and then I take them, or I put them back in the mail and send them to the township clerk. Return to sender, addressee unknown. And it came 2 days after the election. It was the postal system, and I took it down and showed the clerk. I said, look, we tried to vote, and this is what the U.S. Postal System did to you. And she apologized. She had nothing to do with it, but it was somebody in the postal system. I mean, I didn't want to open his ballot or anything. I kept it closed. I just put it in another envelope and sent it to the township clerk. Returned addressee unknown. You can't do anything about it. It's just something to laugh about.
And I think also we have to recognize that while we do the absolute best we can, in the past and in the future, there will still be mistakes. And I just want to make sure that we've done everything possible according to law and our Constitution. And that's where the violation took place in a place like Pennsylvania, Georgia, even Arizona, and Michigan. But I wasn't trying to take away anybody's right to vote or the vote of Michigan by the positions I had. I was simply saying, when you violate the Constitution once, how are you going to stop it for the future? Go here and then.
A comment, not a question, Tim. Voting to me, I've been voting for 50 years. I've been voting in person every time. Voting is extremely important to me. That's why I vote in person. If it's important for somebody to vote, can't they make the effort to properly fill out a ballot, mail it in, request a ballot, and do all of that? Or is it just that even, it doesn't matter. You can go and harvest votes, recruit people to vote that shouldn't vote, that don't pay any attention, or what? Does the election matter? It matters greatly to me. And that's why I vote in person. I could take the time from my day to vote on a Tuesday. That's not a problem. There's nothing stopping me from voting. I easily qualify for absentee ballot without the proposal to law because of my age. But I still vote in person, and I will until I can't walk or get to the ballot place because it's important to me. That's all I got to say. Thanks.
I just think that we don't want to go through another election like this last time.
No.
I don't think any of us do we? Hey, just regardless of what political party or what side you come on, we don't want to go through another one like this. Families have been split. Friendships have been broken. Don't want that. And let's do it as easily as possible. But here in this country, we don't have to stick a thumb in a purple ink jar and walk out with the worry that some terrorist is going to cut us down for voting. I'll run here and then we'll come back here.
Just one thing that you can comment on if you want to. It's just kind of a nitpicky thing, and then a question about the election as well. You said the judge ruled against the Secretary of State for unconstitutional actions in how she handled the 2020 election. That's not quite accurate. The judge ruled that she didn't follow the Administrative Procedures Act in doing that advisement. They didn't rule on the issue of constitutionality. Okay, you can respond to that if you want, but also I have a question. Why did you want to respond first?
I would just respond.
Yeah, okay.
The only reason they could rule that way because it was unconstitutional what she did. She did not have the authority because the Constitution didn't give her the authority. And you have the Administrative Procedures Act and all the rest, but that is covered by the fact that it is the state legislature that has that authority. And it was an issue of signatures, of disregarding set requirements for clerks in accepting ballots.
Yeah, and the guidance that she gave, she didn't follow they didn't rule about her guidance being unconstitutional. They ruled that she didn't follow the Administrative Procedures Act. Okay. My question then, why did you only object to Pennsylvania's and Arizona's votes, not other states like Ohio or California or whoever?
Those are the only two brought up. You have to have 2 House members and one senator from the states to bring that up. So while I signed on as a member from Michigan to object to Michigan, for instance, neither of our senators signed on, so it couldn't be brought up. The only two states, well, there were 3 states originally brought up. One was Georgia, and then Senator Kelly
Loeffler.
withdrew her. So we only had 2 votes that night. Yes.
Hey, Mark, Jim. When you said that we don't want another election in 2020, the only way I can see to stop that is to get to the bottom of what happened in 2020. The Democrats mostly seem to be against forensic audits. Yet if we don't, I know it takes time, I know it costs money, but if we don't do that to find out if the signatures match, if the ballots all came in and were supposed to, come by mail, but they weren't folded or anything, I think we have to get to the bottom of that, or we'll always have people doubting the elections.
I agree, and that's up to each state legislature.
You're right.
To do that. And I've certainly communicated my opinions to my state legislators, including leadership here. And I appreciate the fact that they are working through the law change to tighten things up, to make it not only safe to vote, easy to vote, but secure and full of integrity.
Thank you.
Other questions? It's good seeing young voters here too.
I wish I was one of them.
So do I.
Well, my wife's greatest concern, I said, that's a great question. The news, no matter the source, is never good. It's just best not to watch it and go forward. And maybe older, but at least we've learned the goal set. What's the greatest accomplishment he could make? Think of his staff, all the other staffs out there. They get to see this firsthand, brought whether it's a congressman or a senator or a county commissioner, at any level, and it's got to be grievous. Ask him what his vision is as far as his greatest concern that he can go forward on and try to get people to understand and go forward. And that's all people, not any specific group. But what is your greatest goal now?
Well, my greatest goal is to communicate to people what is actually going on. I think having a son who was a former journalist, Pulitzer-nominated journalist, I believe in the power of the fourth estate. The power of the fourth estate has been lost. And so people aren't hearing what's going on. My communication comes out, in fact, not so much Republican or Democrat. Because parties change. Democrat Party isn't the Democrat Party that I grew up with in Chicago. Democrat Party isn't the party that I grew up with just a few years back. Majority in the U.S. House right now will come more closely related to socialist.
Thank you.
Not even liberal anymore. So my greatest purpose is drawing people's attention back to this amazing little document, the Constitution, that protects people against me and others. And it assures that everyone in this great country will be treated with justice under something that doesn't change unless we disregard it. And that's what I saw in this last election. And that's what I see in a number of bills that are being authorized that go away from this just because we feel like we ought to do it. And if we're running our country on feelings, wow, we don't have much security. And it becomes then simple power There's a billboard down in Monroe County now that says that I don't believe in democracy. And I don't know if there's a cell phone taping me today. I assume there is. And that will be used in some type of ad or attack on me, but generally taking it out of context. It's not that I'm opposed to democracy. It's I believe we are not a democracy. We are a republic. That's a constitutional democracy. It's not a democracy that failed every time it's been tried in the world, whether it's Greek or Roman empires. That was majority rules. Here are majority rules within the confines of this beautiful little document called the Constitution that says the minority is protected. So that would be my greatest desire. I've got plenty of bills that I've authored, plenty of bills that have become law.
Yeah, when I'm finished. Okay, thank you.
But the most important thing I can do is draw people back to what the greatness of this country is. The most unique experience in governments that has ever been attempted in this world. There was none before us. It was a republic, a constitutional democracy. And we've done it pretty well. And right now to see the attacks on it coming from organizations out there, whether it be Antifa, BLM,
Oath Keepers.
Joseph Goebbels.
or Oath Keepers, Joseph Goebbels, or any others. That's all wrong. What took place by a number of people on January 6th was wrong. It didn't understand the value of the Constitution. And while some of those people in there weren't committing violence, and we're hearing more of those tapes right now, others were, and they were wrong. But I think that comes from a misunderstanding of what this country is all about. Where there were some people who felt so frustrated and disregarded with their vote that they thought they had to do this. And out of the 10,000 or so that were the original rally, only 1,000 or less came to the Capitol. I saw them. I was there on the floor of the House. I heard all the commotion. I saw the broken glass in windows. I saw people prone on the floor with guns pointed at them.
Who had the guns?
Yeah, how could that have been stopped? That's the thing that worries me.
Very easily. The same way they stopped this from happening for a State of the Union address. You don't get near the Capitol on the State of the Union address night. You don't get near the Capitol. You don't get on the grounds unless you have the authorization that a member of Congress has given to you, and you come in and you go through the tunnels at appropriate time as identified. I remember taking Ted Nugent down those hallways one time, and he said I thought he could get away with a broadhead arrow on his hat that he normally wears. I said, Ted, I don't think you're going to get away with that. And his wife said, Ted, why don't you take that hat off? I said, I'll wear it. He got past all the police because they liked Ted. But when he got up to the Sergeant at Arms in the gallery where he was going to be seated, he had to hand his hat over to the Sergeant at Arms we put in a locker. So all sorts of ways they have to protect the Capitol. They didn't do it. They had bicycle racks up there. And if they had heard 6 days prior that Oath Keepers and Proud Boys were coming in, and they had the ability to turn around buses of Proud Boys that came into the Capitol that day and send them back, they also should have assumed that some of those Proud Boys would be getting out of buses and finding ways into the Capitol, and Oath Keepers and others. And oh, by the way, there could be Antifa involved. Antifa had torn up parts of the Capitol before. So why would you not expect some of that? Why wasn't the Capitol Security Commission headed by who? Nancy Pelosi. Why didn't she call for National Guard troops to come in based upon it? Why?
Well, you know, I feel more disappointed in what our former president did. I mean,
that's
he
right.
really excited people to get them to get there. I mean, he really did a lot of damage.
But did he not have the legal right to do what he did?
Yeah.
He was president of the United States.
Oh my goodness.
And if you listen to his words, when he said to the people, we will march to the Capitol, we will do it peacefully.
Great.
Why didn't he march with them then?
I don't know.
Oh my
But the
goodness.
issue again is, those 1,000 people, they're responsible for their own actions.
But they felt
This is not-
disenfranchised because a lot of people spread the big lie.
Spread what big lie?
What is the big lie?
The big lie is that President Trump should have been president.
How do you know that?
What? How do I know what? Because I believe that our secretaries of states in every single state did a very good job
How
to
do you
try.
know that? See, that I'm not trying
Yeah.
to be ugly or nasty.
We have, because
That's
we
a good
believed it 4 years ago. We believed it 8 years ago. We believed it 12 years
No,
ago.
they didn't. I sat there in Electoral College on the floor of the House 4 years ago when Democrats stood up and objected to Trump. And ultimately, which was humorous, Vice President Biden had to shut them down just like Pence had to do this time.
So I know we feel like there needs to be an investigation into 2020, but I'm still waiting for the one from 2016. So I say let's really
You think
let's
that
do
was
that.
rigged, 2016?
I don't think it was rigged, but
Well,
I
you know,
think that if we
I-
want
I-
an investigation, we should
You make a wonderful point.
really get our ducks
If
in a
this is
row.
what's going to be our elections for the coming future, we don't want it like that.
No.
It didn't used to be. 8 years ago, it
Get
was
it
like this.
straightened out.
Right, let's get it
We had hanging
straightened out.
chads, but that was one state. One state. But we didn't have it all over the United States. We didn't have states like California doing ballot harvesting. And the Republicans this year in California said nuts. We got beat about the heads wrongly in 2018. We lost seats in California we shouldn't have lost because of ballot harvesting. So we're going to do it too. And so the Republicans did it, ballot harvesting this year, and we took 5 seats back in California.
Tell me what ballot harvesting is. I don't really know the meaning of that.
So you either ask people or pay people to go out to people who have not voted yet, who are registered to vote, and specifically you know what party they're from.
There has been documentation and lawsuits for that, like people have been prosecuted for this ballot harvesting.
They have it in California.
But really, I mean, so it really didn't happen.
And so it really did happen.
How do you know it happened?
It really happened because it's legal in California. It's legal.
To pay someone to go vote? I don't think that's legal in
Not pay someone to
California.
go vote, pay people to go out and pick up ballots, collect ballots and bring them in. And in California, you can bring them in up to a day or two after the election. And that's
I
what,
gotta check that.
HR 1 will allow that across the entire United States.
Is that true?
Read the bill.
In Mexico, build the wall.
It'll
You know, so
allow,
that's the
allow
issue.
ballots to come in 2 days later.
I mean, that happens in other states. And that will be allowed if HR 1 passes. Thankfully, it's not going to pass. Joe Manchin and others see that as ridiculous. So, you had a question.
Yes, in terms of, as you know, gas prices continue to rise, and we just it was kind of announced that President Biden wanted to stop the Keystone Pipeline, and then we've also had in Michigan with Enbridge Line 5 and the Governor Whitmer trying to shut that down as well. Is there anything that on the congressional level that you have tried to advocate for in terms of trying to make, I guess, help the oil industry a little bit? Not necessarily, you know, I guess help them, but be able to help the consumer on our end.
Well, one perfect example is my co-sponsorship of legislation to keep the Line 5 or the Keystone Pipeline open. The other was to reject a waiver for Russia to bring their Nord Stream pipeline through Ukraine to Germany. Germany violates NATO agreements in doing that. But this president gave a waiver for Russia to bring a pipeline, finish and complete a pipeline, to provide natural gas to Germany. And he shut down our Keystone pipeline. And he won't take a position yet in support of Line 5. So we are impacting negatively America's energy independence and American jobs and giving opportunity to Russia. That makes sense. And yesterday the debate came up on that issue relative to carbon and climate change. What's in that pipeline coming from Russia is dirtier than what would be coming through Line 5 or Keystone Pipeline. And so in fact, we are giving authorization for more pollution and taking away the opportunity for America to get cleaner, less carbonated, carbon-upped fuel. Why? Why? And so today I see 3.19 a gallon gas where the gas station I normally get it at. And I filled a number of cans for my lawnmowers and stuff a week ago at $2.99. See if this is a spam. It's not. Yes, sir.
Going back to the election stuff, I found that interesting, something you said. I'm wondering why, I don't know when this was, last year, a couple years ago, you voted against bringing back some of the provisions of the Voting Rights Act. I wonder why you did that.
I'd have to go back and look at what it was.
It was bringing back some of the provisions that were ruled against in Shelby v. Holder.
Tell me what those were.
Basically federal oversight of some of the southern states and their past practices as far as race and elections.
I don't know of any violations in southern states that keep people from voting. So I'm not trying to be.
I understand. It was a couple years ago.
I'd have to look at that. Yeah. The only reason I would have seen it was unnecessary. It was done for perception purposes, for political reasons to gain the votes of minorities in this case, when it was unnecessary. So, only thing I guess. Yes, sir.
Again, thank you for your time. I'm sure everyone wants to get on with their day, but
this is my day.
I know, this is your day, and you're giving it to us. And we get limited in our time because we have to do more today. But I will be taking this home, and your answer was actually made previously. My wife is not from here, and she speaks multiple languages. And she and I learned in college, she learned growing up, democracy, the word is French, and it stands for, simple translation, mob rule. We are not a democracy. We do not believe in mob rule. And you stand for the Constitution, which clearly gives us the vote.
Individuals who were in the leadership of our country from the very beginning, who had slaves. That doesn't make us a racist nation. Most of the people in this country didn't have slaves. Most of the people fighting for freedom from Great Britain, from England, didn't have slaves. Most of them understood they didn't want to be under subservience to a king. Now that's the issue we ought to be teaching our kids. But to teach them that 1619 was the beginning of our country when slave ships came over here. That's wrong. It's absolutely wrong. It goes against all history. And for our kids to be tainted with a belief that this nation was founded on anything other than a desire for personal liberty and justice Constitution, a union that is continually being perfected. We're not perfect, never will be. As long as I'm a citizen, it'll never be a perfect country. But it's a nation that has been willing to say, when we're wrong, we'll fix it. We did that with the Civil War. I mean, even the Democrat Party is no longer a racist party. They were founded as racists. Up until I served with Senator Byrd. He was once the Grand Poobah, or whatever they call it, of the Ku Klux Klan. I don't think you'll see Democrat colleagues of mine now who would even countenance being part of Ku Klux Klan, but they once were. Even the party is being perfected. Sadly, they're going to socialism, but other than that, so that's when I look at that and I see those type of made-up historical statements and broad generalizations, rather than teaching about Jefferson and how he ultimately repudiated slavery and how he took care of the slaves even when he had slaves. Of John Adams,
Like Sally Hemmings?
Pardon?
Like Sally Hemmings?
Like Sally Hemmings as well.
Who couldn't consent to the relationship he had with her.
And that, give me the history on that.
Okay.
Give me the fact on the fact that she couldn't consent. But then you look at John Adams. John Adams, the second president of the United States. Yeah, right. John Adams, who never had a slave and spoke against slavery. I mean, think about Lincoln. Talk about that. Don't go back, point people to all of our errors, and there were errors, sure.
I think one of the big things with the 1619 Project is the idea that our economy has grown and developed and prospered on the backs of slavery.
That's false.
That's
false.
No.
That is true.
Northern textile industry certainly benefited
For a few years in the whole panoply of what our 240 plus years of existence is, did it prosper on the backs of slaves. There are a lot of people up north that prosper on backs of a lot of kids in their family.
So we have to tell all the stories, you know. That's what I think we need to tell all the stories.
I think we tell the stories in the history books I read when I was a kid. We weren't told that there were no slaves involved. And we read the story about Uncle Tom. We read the stories about all that. And so now we need to major on that, make that the key building block of America. No, it's not.
Now you can't read those stories.
Yeah, you can.
You're not allowed to read.
Yeah, you can.
Yes,
Yeah.
you do.
It's crazy.
But you know, earlier about immigration, when we think about immigration, how did we all get here? I mean, we stole this land from people. And I'm sorry, you know, I get so excited, I get so emotional because I teach English as a second language. I deal a lot with international
All countries
people.
were stolen from us.
And it's not right.
It comes from
It's in the
Shawnee
past.
stole it from other
It's not.
Can we hear from the congressman, please?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I get so excited about it. I'm sorry.
Listen, I disagree
It really.
with you. I don't think we stole anything. Did we commit atrocities on Native Americans?
Yes.
Indians?
Yes.
Absolutely. Did they commit atrocities on us? Absolutely. Absolutely. That's sin. That's an evil nature. And we're fixing that. But right now, we seem to be going back. That if you don't agree with me, I'm going to cancel you.
Right.
I'm not going to befriend you anymore. I think that's got to change. And I think parents have to stand up to their schools and say, we will accept this or we won't accept that. That's their responsibility.
But don't you want your kids to know everything as much as possible?
I sure do. So we'll waste time on the 1619 project. Why make that the key component?
Because it was one of the first ones written about
A
it.
story that has not really been told.
That's
Well,
right.
Tell
I
that
learned it
portion.
in school.
But
Yeah.
don't make a critical race theory that mandated
Well,
Make that the founding of America.
I think we need to respect the 6,000 black Africans that we have in Eaton County.
Exactly.
I think that's really
We don't.
important.
Who doesn't here?
Well, if we're saying that we're
Who
not
doesn't?
going to teach about the 1619
But
project,
think of them as well.
yeah,
If they'd been back in Uganda or even more poorly where my son-in-law from Rwanda grew up and had to flee because the Tutsis were being hacked to death.
I know about that.
My son-in-law says when he meets an African American here who's never lived any place other than here, and his parents haven't lived any place other than here, what are they complaining about? America has given all sorts of opportunities. And when you talk with people like some of the noted William Raspberry, Thomas Sowell, and Clarence Thomas, they'll say, yeah, there was bad things that went on relative to African Americans years gone by. But I am so blessed that I was born here and not any other place. And stop making me a victim. That's what my son-in-law would say. And my three African American granddaughters now, who live in Africa, but have the benefits of being American as well. Mm-hmm. I'm sick of this division. Let's get back to being United States of America.
Then when
and the people that have had opportunities who've come, and yes, I'm immigrant production.
But you actually used some fearful words earlier when you talked about, Muslim terrorists coming. I have a lot of Muslim friends that are not terrorists. Exactly. But you said those words and you...
Generalizing. You didn't generalize. It's true. There are people that are terrorists. There's white terrorists.
I said there were terrorists coming across from the Middle East. I didn't use the word Muslim.
You didn't, you're right.
Anybody take that?
I think you did, but,
Are you racist?
I am not. And I try hard not to be, but sometimes I think things that I shouldn't think, and I catch
Well,
myself.
listen,
I gotta go to work.
Yeah.
I'm going to say one thing. When I'm telling the truth about what's coming across that border, there are Middle East terrorists coming across.
Oh, that's what you said, Middle East.
I said Middle East.
Yes, you did.
But there are Muslim terrorists coming across as well.
But if you don't want us to fearful...
There are Chinese terrorists coming across as well.
Well...
You don't want to hear that.
I think we live on
I think it's not a...
It's the truth, though.
Tell the truth.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you for being here. It's been a spirited discussion.